I don't think it was until Mark Lapine, a good friend of mine, ended up playing High Tide at Pro Tour Rome and making top four with his High Tide deck with Merchant Scroll that people finally played Merchant Scroll. And it just seemed so terrible to them for some reason. And oftentimes people, another great example of a card that ended up being very important in the early days of Magic was Impulse. And people really, they miss out on this stuff. Now you may say, oh, well, everyone's learned these lessons by now and everybody knows it. And maybe this is all sort of silly to bring up. But I don't think so. I don't think it's silly to bring up because I continuously see people making mistakes in deck construction. I continuously watch deck construction trends nowadays and what decks are being built, and people constantly forget about important cards when they're building decks, and they do a good job, by and large, building decks, but oftentimes, key factors are missed. Now here's Impulse, and this is a card that tends to sort of defy themes. For instance, in Pro Tour Paris, when I won Pro Tour Paris, I believe we were the only ones that actually had Impulse in our Bloom Drain decks. Maybe Patrick Chapin had them too. He was kind of cutting edge back then, and he and I used to communicate a lot, so that's possible. But when I looked at the deck list after the Pro Tournament, I was just stunned. There were no Impulses in the top 8 decks that were also Bloom Drain decks. I was so worried about them, but without Impulse, what did I have to be worried about? They'd be playing much inferior cards, but they had themes that were very different, and those themes would override them. Oftentimes we'll see somebody who's in the theme of being a red deck, and they don't realize, oh, I could just put a little green in and have a Blood Braid Elf. Oftentimes you have an elf deck because you want to have an elf deck, but don't realize that elves aren't particularly good in the environment. So that's a very important thing, and I want you to really watch for these themes because they're deal breakers when it comes to deck construction, especially because of the way that research and development, that WotC's team puts out various new decks and new strategies and new ideas. They put out new cards, and those cards certainly follow various themes that are easily identifiable. I want you to be particularly careful of those themes that are easily identifiable, because oftentimes those are the ones that'll screw you the most because your mind will latch onto them, and oftentimes it's just not that good. So I began this by saying, why is Patrick Chapin running all this 5-color? Well, this all comes back to a conversation that Patrick and I had about a year ago at the beginning of the Pro Tour season during Pro Tour Hollywood. And we really weren't happy with our performance at Pro Tour Hollywood from a deck building standpoint, and we really wanted to do a better job with deck construction. And we felt like we made some mistakes during that time, and that we could really improve things. And since then, Patrick has really just gone bonkers with deck building. He helped our deck building team help build LSV's deck that he won Pro Tour Berlin with. Had a great conversation with LSV about that at Worlds. Our Worlds deck was exceptional. Did very, very well for standard. Performed, it was really the top performing deck. And I think Manuel Bucher did particularly well with it. And at Nationals, Mark Herberholz made top 8 with our deck as well. We had a different deck that Mike Jacobs played, and Mike ended up winning. And Mike's a tremendous deck builder and player. So, we've had all this success, and it's always been these 5-color decks. Why? Well, as Patrick has been putting together Next Level Magic, and by the way, you can find out about Next Level Magic. I'll pull up a Windows Explorer window. You can go over to Star City Games, and every week Patrick has been writing a free article, and it's been really tremendous material. Actually, a number of people qualify for their national championships on his advice. I'm on starcitygame.com, and hopefully this isn't too disorienting as I scroll down, but this is the most recent preview. And you'll see that Patrick is talking about these concepts like tempo. Last week he talked about semi-soft blocks. Semi-soft blocks is actually from, or at the very beginning of this thing, maybe two or 3 weeks ago, semi-soft blocks is actually from the original MTG Secrets home study course that David Mills and I put together. And Patrick really went through our brains and went through our Magic Gathering home study course. He went through our Magic Secrets course and ripped out most of the most important concepts in it. And he's included in Next Level Magic. Actually, Next Level Magic, I believe, will be going live. It'll actually be available. It's Patrick's new home study course, and I think it'll be available next week. I think it's going to be very reasonably priced. and you can find it on StarCityGames.com. If you go to the free article section, you can check out that. And it's been really nifty helping Patrick put this home study course together, because he's been very focused on these meta concepts that can really help people. And one of the things that he wanted to do leading up to the release of Next Level Magic, he's been working on it for about a year now, is he really wanted to demonstrate a pattern of success with deck construction himself and do a good job. Not necessarily, of course, he himself could play well and do well in the tournament, and that's not necessarily going to translate to your success, but he really wanted to make sure that things translated into folks' success. And so he worked on really building decks that others could take and thrive with them and do well with them. And that's, we've really had tremendous success. Actually, just last week, Mike Jacobs took our 5-color Blood Braid deck and made top 8 at the Grand Prix in Seattle. Had a very close loss to either I believe the eventual champion or the eventual runner-up, but close stuff. And so the whole 5-color concept, and you can get some hints from it if you check out these articles. There's also an article on Sideboard.com. If you click inside the Pro Tour Honolulu coverage, I'll click back so you can see how I got here. I just went to Sideboard.com, and they have a little banner ad up here for live coverage of Pro Tour Honolulu. That the Pro Tour Top 8 draft is beginning right about now. So I'm missing out on that a bit to share it with you, but I'll be able to go through the draft recap. And I'm scrolling down here. By the way, here's our teammate Zak Hill, 3rd seed. Good luck to you, Zak. It's a draft, so he won't be using our deck in the top 8. Although he may be drafting our 5-color deck. I don't know what Zak drafts. But if we scroll down here, we'll see Cascading the Michigan Way, featured deck tech, and this is a bit about gives a bit of insight into the deck that I'm going through right now. Actually, one of the changes that Zak made in the deck was he put, I believe, one Nicole Bolas Planeswalker in his deck to kind of give him more semi-soft block, kind of game win potential. I believe Patrick pretty much went ahead and relied on the Cruel Ultimatums in the main deck for winning the game and putting him over the top. So the 5-color theme, where did this 5-color theme come from? Well, one of the important concepts that really helped hundreds of people, actually thousands, we got thousands of testimonials from MTG Secrets from people often who had never even won a game of Magic. And they would come over and ask us, well, how do we win, and how do we, get consistency out of my game? And maybe they didn't really think that we were going to help them, but we did, and really had a tremendous relationship, and still do have a tremendous relationship with those folks. That's why I've continued to design decks and be involved in Magic, is because I really fell in love with teaching Magic and sharing with people, and I think that's something that Patrick's going through right now, and it's very enjoyable to watch for him. But when we went to the 5-color concept, what we decided to do was leverage another concept, and I believe that this is another sneak preview from Next Level Magic. I'm pretty sure that Patrick covered it in there, which is the ultimate deck concept. And what we want to do with our ultimate deck is we want to identify a single deck that we think is really going to be strong, and we want to learn how to play that deck really well, and test that deck and that deck only, and tweak it and tune it, and become very good at it. And that may seem kind of crazy, but if we choose a good enough deck, we can really bring that deck to its ultimate potential if we choose a good enough potential deck. And we've demonstrated it through the course of this Pro Tour season. Actually, now it's even bleeding over into taking what we've learned from Standard and bringing it over to Block Constructed as well. And of course, we do that a bit. You don't want to overly generalize, because a lot of times if you think that a Standard deck will work in Extended, it won't, and that can kind of screw you up. We don't want to screw that up. So when it comes to this 5-color concept, we just realized that the fundamentals were there when it came to the lands to do this. With Reflection Pool and Vivid Lands and the Filter Lands, a really excellent combination that we could really run decks that would have, well, I mean, in this case, triple black, double red, double blue in the same deck with a red-green card, in the same deck with a black-blue-white card, and so forth. I mean, there's all these combinations of colors that seem very disparate and very out there. And, of course, in Standard, we'll end up running Cryptic Command in a deck that, has Wrath of God or, just totally different colors. Wrath of God with Cruel Ultimatum is double white, double blue, triple black, double red. Maybe we'll throw in some Chameleon Colossus in there to get a little bit more green going on.